welcome to another episode of Conversations with Annie and Kate. Tonight we have with us Annie and Joan Westenberg. Over to you, Annie, to introduce Joan.
It's always a joy when you get to introduce a really, really lovely and wonderful friend. So welcome, Joan. Joan is an award-winning Australian PR director. And by the way, I'm really sorry, I'm slightly distracted. My dog's eating her dinner in the background. So if you can hear a slightly dinging noise like that, that's her name tag banging on the silver bowl that she's eating out of. It's not silver, it's metal. Anyway, back to Joan. Joan is an award-winning Australian PR director, contemporary writer and creative. She's the director of content at Linktree and the founder of her PR and communications firm Studio Self, which I know she's super proud of, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that later. Her approach to messaging and communication and semiotics has built her reputation as a writer. She is one of the leading startup voices in Australia, and we're super proud to have her on the podcast today. She's been featured in the San Francisco Chronicle, Wired, The Observer, ABC, SBS, Crikey, and about 450 other publications. Her regular work can be found on her blog Pizza Party, which is all about creativity, culture, and technology. And as if she wasn't busy enough already, she's the creator of a website called transgenderinclusion.com, which has been super important in the startup ecosystem here in Australia to open source workplace inclusion and encourage startups here in Australia to really embrace how they can make all people within the technology ecosystem feel welcome, know that they are welcome, and basically be a manifesto for creativity in the indie part of our industry, which frankly is a huge growth area as well. So Joan, welcome. We're super glad to have you.
Thank you, my darling. I'm really happy to be here.
So and now we talk about what we're drinking, and I'm quite pleased because I've got something that's quite good. Gentleman's Collection. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm a bad interrupter. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, what are we all drinking? So you've started off with the Gentleman's Collection, which for a female-led podcast is an interesting choice you've made there, Kate.
It was the one I picked up in the bottle shop, I must admit.
Also, I am actually joking. It's quite a nice drop.
I am a year and a half sober, so I am drinking Heaps Normal, which is an Australian-made non-alcoholic beer for all of us who still want to have a drink, but don't want to have the alcohol in it.
And by the way, badass congratulations on being sober for that long. I know it's always an incredible thing. I certainly couldn't do it, largely because I really still like alcohol too much. But you have done a phenomenal job, Joan.
Thank you. Look, you've definitely seen me at my worst before I got sober. It was not good. It's good now.
And look, if you're okay to go though, we might speak about that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, let's talk about it. Absolutely.
And then all right, this is a rare moment where I'm looking at the bottle of wine I'm drinking. It's actually from my quarterly box of wine from Vina Mofo, who I love dearly. And it's called Coupatage or Coupache Negre. So I'm going, it's a Spanish wine, except it says it's product of Spain, imported by Cremorne in Victoria. So who the hell knows where it's from? Either way, it's a nice red wine and it's quite lovely.
I love it.
Excellent. And now, Annie, do you want to ask our first question?
Oh, no, you can go first.
All righty. Choosing. Oh, I might start off with what you do self-care and how do you approach it?
Yeah. Look, self-care is the most important part of my life because I think the number one priority and responsibility that you have is yourself. You know, I've always said that you cannot save anybody else from drowning if you don't have the strength left in you to swim. And I really think that's true of all of us. I think we have this idea of self-care that we glean from Instagram and from curated lives on social media, that it has to all be picture perfect. It has to all be rose gold and candles and so on. But self-care is just about giving yourself the nourishment that you need to get through what you need. For me, that's a range of different things. You know, I woke up this morning and I walked to Cassie's place, picked up Artemis to drop him off at daycare. And on the way back home, I got a muffin mix and baked some blueberry muffins before I started work so that my house would smell like blueberry cupcakes, and it's really nice and comforting and warm. And then we stopped work and just put down our devices and made breakfast burritos for brunch so that we had a little meal to share together. And then tonight, when I finish this podcast, I will put down my screens and I will be completely focused on being with them, being with my books, and being away from the work and the work stress. I just feel like we have a society that is designed to push us to not look after ourselves, because that's how companies monetize us. It's how companies keep us coming back for more. It's how digital platforms hook into us and keep us like addicted to our news feeds. And so there's something radical about drawing boundaries and drawing lines and saying, I'm going to look after myself now, and I'm going to do it in a way that makes sense for me.
Do you see, because it's really interesting to me that you've mentioned boundaries, and I think a lot of people nowadays, especially with so many people working from home, don't have strong boundaries between work and personal life. Have you consciously put those boundaries in place?
Very, very consciously. Yeah. I know what it's like to be a workaholic. You know, I've worked in tech startups for a long time. I've worked from 7 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night doing fundraisers and doing seed rounds and doing whatever it is. And I've gotten up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do calls with US clients. I've run myself ragged, and I have absolutely had a breakdown. And so I know how easy it is to let work just consume you. But I mean, we work to live, we don't live to work. And at 31, I don't want to keep on bleeding myself dry for a whole bunch of people who don't have the same values as me, or don't respect that I have a priority in my life that isn't always work. And so when it comes to work-life balance, I don't think you can ever completely balance it. I mean,
don't you think we got it the wrong way around? Don't you think we should say life-work balance?
I wish we could, but we're still required to spend X amount of our time at jobs in order to survive and make the money that we need to live and put food on the table and put a roof over our heads. And so work still has to be that priority because we have these responsibilities, you know, and it's just our society is not designed in a way that lets us work less and live more. And so what matters isn't necessarily saying, okay, well, I'm going to achieve balance. It's saying that you are going to accept and acknowledge that there is an imbalance, but make sure that when you aren't working, you are present and focused on the things that aren't work, and making sure that they don't bleed over into each other. When you start work, like, be there and be present at work. But when you finish work, finish at a reasonable hour. Nobody needs you to be answering emails at 9 o'clock at night. If doing it makes you feel important, great, but it's still bad for you. If you have a family around you, like, your eyes should be like focused on them, taking in how beautiful they are, because believe me, like, there's something more to look at than tweets, blue ticks, notifications. You know, look at your family. And so I think that if you can just find a way to switch off your work self and make sure that you're turning on your home life self, that's going to make a difference.
Well, the number of people who haven't turned off notifications on mail and tweets just astonishes me. And they're like, oh, I keep getting interrupted. I was like, just turn them off.
Yeah. I honestly do not open my emails. I don't open Slack. I don't open my calendar after 6 o'clock. I don't do that.
Well, I deleted Facebook from my phone. I don't have Slack. I haven't had it for years because, frankly, it's not actually that useful. And on emails, I've targeted it to be only certain people's emails will ping. And that's okay. That's the choice I've made. And by the way, those people are not work, they're family. That's different, right? You know, I live halfway around the world from where the rest of my family lives. So that's a choice I've made of, if they need me, then I want to still be available to them. But otherwise, and I learned this very quickly when I joined Microsoft, because, you know, when you work for a company where the head office is, you know, somewhere between 17 and 19 hours behind you, that usually means Saturday is a complete disaster for Sydney-based people because they're still at work. It's still Friday. Mornings are a complete disaster because they've got, you know, a few hours ahead of you and your inbox is completely full of stuff. So you have to create your own rules. And I think what's really lovely about what you've just said there, Joan, is no one's going to tell you off for doing that, creating your own rules. And I think sometimes we get sucked into this process of this is what people expect of me. No one expects anything of you, but they will take as much as you will give until you tell them that you won't.
That's exactly it. You know, I work a 4-day week. That's my working setup. And I tell all my clients that before they come on board. I tell them Fridays I am offline and you can't reach me. I told Linktree I work 4 days a week. And basically most of us just piss away our Fridays anyway when we're in the office because it's Friday, so who the fuck cares? Which means that I get about the same amount of time everyone else gets to do my work. It's just that I do it smarter, I do it in a more focused way, and then on Fridays I have the day off. And that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But I also use that as a filter to choose wonderful people to work with and for. I mean, Linktree have just announced yesterday that they're giving everyone in the company a paid day off on Monday just because lockdown is hard. And so we're all taking an extra long weekend to get out there and live our lives a little bit. And the instruction from Alex, the CEO, was really, really, really don't be online. If you can avoid being online, that's what you should be doing. Take a break from social media for the day. Take a break from your news feeds and just focus on your family. So like people who are attracted to the kind of values that I have are the people I want to work with, and people who aren't, well, my rules filter them out so they can get fucked. And I like that.
I love that as well. And again, we're going to come back to that one because I know values are super important to you. But here's my question for you. I was going to ask you, what books would you recommend for people to read? But we can maybe get that from you and put that into the chat afterwards. I want to ask you, what's the one thing that you've done that you will never do again?
It's a bunch of different ways I could answer that one.
I know why I'm asking it as well, because I don't know where you're going to go with it.
I will not give people blowjobs on Craigslist for money.
All right, I knew you were going to go somewhere interesting. All right, so help us understand where were you at that point when you chose to do it?
Well, I had sold a business after my business partner had been convicted for assault and for stealing a bunch of money from myself and some of our clients. So I'd sold what I could and paid off a bunch of the debts, and then I had taken the rest of the money and spent it on booze, cocaine, and recording a bunch of demos for my band. And so I was flat fucking broke and trying to work out what career I could have next and trying to like work an unpaid internship in tech so I could start that career. And I was just out of money, and it was pretty fucked. And the reason I wouldn't do it again is because I did wind up being sexually assaulted by someone, and it was a rough period of my life that I haven't really spoken about much publicly.
You have got some incredible backstories, Joan, that we don't need to go into all of them on this podcast, but one of the things that I'm always, every single time I speak with you, your resilience is extraordinary. Your ability to turn a negative into something that can power you forward. How do you do that? How do you, if you were sort of speaking to somebody else who may have gone through something similar, what would your advice be to help them to turn it from being something that could perhaps hold them back to something that, similar to where you are right now, is actually something that drives you?
I think I would tell people that everything that happens to you, everything that you go through is a story. But it's not a story someone else is writing about you. It's a story that you get to wake up every single day and write. Like every single chapter comes from you. And the end is up to you as well. We aren't just characters in some kind of narrative. We are entirely in charge of our narrative. It's who we are. We're allowed to be that. Ultimately, nobody else gets to say where things are going to go. And so, yeah, you get knocked down. That's absolutely fine. That's a part of the plot. That's a part of the story. What happens next is you get yourself up, and then you get to keep on writing it. And one day you'll find some hope in that, and so will other people.
Who do you look to for hope?
Honestly, I look to the younger kids that I know, the younger trans kids. They're something else. These are people who are scared and they're alone a lot of the times. They don't have the the career behind them that I have. They don't have the privileges that I have, and they're still out there just being themselves, unapologetically, unashamedly, without fear of the judgment of the world. And they pay a price for it. I know people who are struggling so hard, but they give me an incredible amount of hope. I mean, I look at the people in my immediate network, and it's so broad. You know, I think I tweeted this the other day. Some of my friends have venture capital funds, and some of my friends have OnlyFans accounts, and it's absolutely true. You know, I sit at that intersection, but I don't draw a whole lot of hope and inspiration from somebody who is investing in tech startups. Like, I think it's cool and I get along great with them, but I draw my inspiration from people who have nothing and are trying to build something, people who have difficult lives and things to overcome. That is hope to me.
That's awesome.
I'm really interested to go back, because you've had a fair amount of adversity to overcome. How have you managed to pick yourself up each time and almost reinvent yourself to where you are now, where you're quite comfortable in yourself and confident? How have you made that trajectory?
I don't think it's so much a trajectory as I'm still finding out who I am. I'm just on a journey to meet myself, and every day I feel like I learn a little bit more about this person called Joan. You know, I think it's the case that I spent a lot of my life buried under so many layers of identity and experience that I'm still digging through those layers, and I'm still working out what's going to be underneath. It's a wonderful surprise every time there's a new element to it. You know, I mean, starting to see someone who has a son and finding that I have a really nurturing kind of side to me where I love kids so much. That's a new thing I didn't know about myself. What will I find out tomorrow? You know, it's just this endless journey. I think I don't want to be at a point where I say, yep, I'm a finished person, because how can anybody be a finished person? I don't think that humans are meant to be like the Beatles' White Album. I think we're meant to be like magnificent oak trees that keep on growing and growing and growing.
So you've been in the tech space for quite some time now, Joan, and you and I have had long, often. I knew Fred would at some point. There you go, everyone. She needs to go and shout at someone walking past the house. So Joan, you and I have had long debates about, you know, the things that are broken within the startup community, whether it's here in Australia or globally around the world. What are some of the things that you still think need fixing?
Well, God, the laundry list, you know. It's easier to say what doesn't need fixing. We don't need more cis-abled, straight, white men. Mm-hmm. I think we have an ecosystem that is designed to be the scalable tech edge case of the status quo. And so we don't have an ecosystem that is designed to have inroads for people who are outside the norm. And the problem is that the norm is defined by essentially white supremacy. The norm is defined by all the things that go with it. And so we just don't allow there to be people who are outliers. And so I feel like in order to change the ecosystem, we have to take a step back and say that just because somebody is a statistical anomaly does not mean that they are an outlier or should be treated as such. We shouldn't be designing an ecosystem that is meant for a majority. We should not be designing that at all. We should be saying every single demographic, regardless of their size, regardless of like how many people make up that demographic, regardless of any kind of element of who they are, they should be treated as an equal demographic to the majority. There is no such thing as, you know, in tech we like to talk about being meritocracy, all that kind of bullshit. We talk about the good of the one not outweighing the good of the many, and I think that's wrong. Sometimes the good of the one has to outweigh the good of the many, because sometimes the many are holding on to a degree of power that they don't deserve.
Couldn't agree more. And I know that conversations that you and I have had in the past around, it's so frustrating. The pace of change is glacially slow sometimes, and it feels like it's almost impenetrable and it can't be done. So how do you keep the faith? How do you keep your energy levels up? Because I may be a white woman in tech, but I'm still white. Being a trans woman in tech is fucking hard. So how do you keep going?
I have decided that I will hope. I don't think hope is something that you feel, or something that you have to like just magically be given. I think hope is a choice. You wake up every day and you say, today I will hope for better. I will hope for more. I will hope for the best. It's that active decision that you're going to lean into that. It doesn't mean things are always going to work out, but it means you will at least say in every situation, in every circumstance, I will embrace hope. And that's something really wonderful. For me, I don't necessarily have this idea that I'm going to change the world for me. And that's never been the goal, but I will change the world for the next generation or the next generation or something like that. And at some point I will be gone and there will be nothing of me left. And that's okay, as long as somebody else gets to experience a lesser degree of anguish than I have. That's kind of what you have to hold on to. I do feel like you have to set yourself some very small goals sometimes, because small goals keep hope alive when you're running low on energy. That's the manageable thing. It's whatever you need to do.
So coming from the perspective of a woman in tech, I've become very skeptical of this myth of meritocracy, because that's always been used as the reason why women aren't getting extra places, aren't getting space.
You can say hi. You sure? Okay. All right. Yes, meritocracy, yeah.
And I think what we need to try and do is make spaces where everyone can just be themselves and contribute. And I very much feel that that's what we need to do. And I think Annie and I've talked about this a lot, that's why I am the way I am and the way I manage. Oh, here's your visitor.
Hi, sweetheart. How you doing? Sorry? Where are my chocolates? They're in the fridge. Yeah. I don't have any Tim Tams, but I have some other chocolate. You can ask my mummy if you can have some.
Important work, checking where the chocolates are.
Smart. He is like the most beautiful, beautiful person in the world. He is.
Bless.
I love him.
You really have kind of grown your maternal streak.
Yeah. I'm in a very different place to where I was when you met me, Annie, I'll tell you that much.
So how long ago was it when we met? Was it 4 years? 3 years?
3 or 4 years, something like that, yeah.
So just for the podcast's sake, I've known Joan for 4 years, and when I first met her, she was coming into one of the co-working spaces that I was working for at the same time and doing a lot of community work. And you mentioned earlier that you had a difficult relationship with alcohol that you've decided was no longer good for you, and you've kicked it for a very, very long time, which is super awesome and good fucking on you. How do you look back, or do you look back anymore at that person you used to be, whether it's the way that you used to interact with people, whether it's now you've got a better control over what you want to say and how you want to say it, whether it is the alcohol part of it? Do you spend a lot of time looking back now, or do you just focus on looking forward?
I think people who aren't aware of their own past are always going to risk repeating their own past. Joan Didion, who is one of my icons, once said that it's important to stay on nodding terms with the people we used to be, lest they come visit us in the dead of the night, or something like that. And I think that's a good thing to think about. I've never found myself wanting to just completely burn the past. It would be an easy thing to do, I guess, at this point in my life, to just say, yes, I'm Joan now, and everything that went before me was non-canon. But that's just not the case. For a long time, I was a struggling person who had an awful lot of flaws and treated a lot of people like shit. And I can say, yeah, I had a drinking problem, but that's not really an excuse. It's not really an explanation. It's just an element of how fucked up I was. And I like to remember that person because that person is an example of how I don't want to live. But at the same time, there was some strength to that person. There was some strength to that human being because who I was became who I am. And that wasn't easy, you know. And I look back at, at how much pain that person was in. And I just know that it was a struggle that was worth it. And it's a struggle I don't want to ever forget.
And what tipped you over the edge in terms of choosing to, you know, sort of give up alcohol and be the person that you are now?
So on the 7th of June, 2019, I decided to jump off my balcony. And I was very, very, very drunk, obviously. I've been drinking since about 11 a.m. And I've been going the entire day. And I was just sitting there in my living room. And I just thought, nah, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to jump off my balcony. And I just don't want to deal with how hard transitioning is. I don't want to deal with how messed up my childhood was. I don't want to deal with whatever the future holds because it's all too much. And the only way that I knew to stop myself from jumping was to drink myself to sleep so that I couldn't hurt myself. So I did that. And then I woke up the next morning and, you know, starting to slowly sober up, I thought, no, you know, I really don't want to end all this. I want to keep on going. I want to push forward. I want to push through. So I pulled out my phone and I messaged a bunch of people I love very dearly, including my friends, Rose and Emily. And I said, guys, I have a drinking problem and it's bad and it's not getting better and I need to stop because if I don't, some bad shit's going to go down. So I messaged them and I said, please help me quit this. And then I went through my apartment and I poured out every bottle of alcohol I had, which was 2 bottles of gin, a bottle of whiskey, and 5 bottles of wine. I poured them all down the sink, and let me tell you, the fumes were overwhelming. And I got rid of them all, and I have never taken a sip of alcohol since.
I actually didn't know that, by the way. So you and I are friends, and I didn't know what the trigger point was. So number one, thank you for sharing that. That's an incredibly personal story, but hopefully it's something that is reasons why we do these conversations is that we normalize some of the stuff that is unspoken or taboo. And there are so many people who have, you know, whether it's an eating disorder or a drinking problem, or they consider their lives not to be as worthy as other people's, or they feel like they're less of a human because they don't do the superhuman stuff that they see their friends doing. This is why we have these conversations, so that we can help make people realize that we're all normal and that we're all slightly broken.
Totally, that's exactly right. I mean, to me, nothing is taboo. Like, ask me anything.
But it's an important part to see these people that you look at and you think they've got it all together, and to hear their story and to hear that they're a real person who's struggled, even though they might look fabulous and seem to have a fabulous life. Everyone's got their own struggles, and so I'm really grateful to you for sharing that. I think I'm glad you didn't jump off the balcony though.
I'm very glad you didn't.
Oh, everyone should be glad I didn't, because I'm fucking fabulous.
100% fabulous, my darling.
What are you working on now? What are your big things that you're working on? You come through all of this. Tell us what it's produced. What are you doing? What are you doing to change the world?
Well, I'm trying to make some really good brownies. That's one of my goals this year. Just make the best possible brownies. They got to be chewy. They've got to have as much of them as possible to be like the edge brownies, because they're really good. So that's kind of like a number one goal, because I figure if every single person knows how to make really good brownies, we're all going to be a lot happier.
I think that's probably true.
Beyond that,
I think the other one that would be good is just knowing how to cook really good your own home fries or home oven cooked chips, or in Kate's case, air fried chips.
That's it. Beyond the brownies, I am working on, obviously I want to grow transgenderinclusion.com because I want more trans people to be included. And I want to continue my work at Linktree because the team there are beautiful humans and I love their mission, I love their message, I love their idea of democratizing the internet.
Look, hold on, we started out, we were talking about your values and how they drive what you do. So that was something we were going to come back to. You obviously found like-minded souls in Linktree. What are your values and how do you align them for your work?
The most important thing is first, do no harm. I think tech companies need to ask themselves whether the product they're building is going to do harm to people. And if that's the case, just don't fucking build it. And that's just something that's really important to me. But beyond that, my values are honesty, truthfulness, authenticity, and just, being your full self, not holding anything back. And for me, Linktree exemplify every single one of those things. My first week at Linktree, talking to the CEO, the first thing he said was, we want to adopt your transgender inclusion policy right away. And it's a sign of somebody who has a good heart and wants to put that heart to the right use cases.
Yeah, that's great.
And you're looking at my client list in the past, my client list now, I have definitely done a lot of work that I am not proud of in my time. I work in public relations and communications, and I've done some comms for some bad things, put it that way. I've done crisis comms that I'm still under an NDA for, that I would not want people to know I had my hands on. But that's not the case now with any of the clients I have. I have clients who are out there changing the world. I have clients like GoTerra who have built it's this amazing hardware ecosystem using robots and maggots to break down food waste in a way that is entirely 100% sustainable. I have clients like Swarm Farm Robotics who are building actual agricultural robots who can make farming easier and better for the people doing it and the people consuming it. I have clients like a new one called COVID Comply who are just helping small businesses to respond to and align with COVID restrictions while still maintaining an actual business. I have clients like just these people who I believe reflect where I want to go.
So do you feel like that is part of what you're integrating your personal and your work so that they're in a better alignment now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do any work that I wouldn't be proud to tell someone about.
So going back to the same point that you just said a couple of seconds ago, Joan, saying you've done things perhaps that you wouldn't really want to put your name towards anymore. And by the way, we've all been there, right? There's in my career, in my 5, 10, 15 years ago, there are many things that I could point towards. I go, oh, I wish I'd not been associated with that.
Yeah.
But as we get older and as we're more in control of our careers, we get to choose more. So if you were giving some advice to any person starting out in tech, whether they be a woman, LGBTIQ, from other different underrepresented groups, because really white guys are fine, they can pretty much choose what they want to do and they're probably going to be okay. But for everybody else, what's your advice for anyone who wants to protect their values that they really hold dear to themselves and make sure that they do feel confident and proud of everything that they do?
You may have to play the game for some amount of time. And the game is nasty. And the game is going to make you feel a little bit icky and a little bit gross. The important part is to know when to stop playing that game. And as long as you can draw that line, you will be okay.
I think Joan has very strong boundaries.
I have very strong boundaries, yeah.
And that is a really healthy thing. So that is a very good thing to develop.
I say to people that it's not your job to understand someone else's boundaries. It's not your job to ask why they have those boundaries. It is your job to respect those boundaries every single time.
You are an incredible human, my friend, and I'm so grateful that I've got to see you change and really grow into the human being that you are now. And really fucking grateful you didn't jump off that balcony. Honestly, I had no idea that that's how bad it had got for you. I knew it wasn't great, but I didn't know it was that bad. And I'm incredibly proud of everything that you do.
Thank you, my darling. Honestly, I'm incredibly proud of myself too.
Isn't that a fabulous thing that you can say about yourself?
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's a really important thing as well, that, you know, as we get older, that we are allowed to say those things out loud in front of a mirror or in front of our friends and go, I did this and I'm proud.
Yeah, and no matter what that victory is in your life, you get to be proud of it. Got the fuck out of bed and put on pants today? Be proud of it. Like, whatever you did that was a victory, the scale of victory is up to you. So own it and be proud.
Love that.
And that is a perfect spot for us to end, and wise words for us to end on. Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, folks.
And please don't forget to like us, subscribe to us, because that would be nice. We'll be back shortly.